Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Gladiator Strength Systems Podcast, Episode 2. Today I'm going to be talking about plyometrics and dynamic effort when it comes to athletic training and how we can utilize plyometrics and dynamic method training to better our performance in sports. First, I wanted to thank you all for tuning in and be on the lookout on social media and YouTube for more content coming soon. My Instagram is gladiator.strength and my YouTube is Gladiator Strength Systems. And yeah, let's get right into it. Plyometrics and the dynamic method. For athletes, plyometrics are a staple in training in order to build speed, explosiveness, and power. Plyometrics are a form of exercise in which the goal is to produce maximum amounts of force in short intervals, thus resulting in force production and power. A quick history of plyometric work. The practice of plyometrics as a training method originated in the former Soviet Union in the 1970s. It was developed by Dr. Yuri Verkhoshansky, known as the father of plyometrics. Plyometrics are also known as the shock method in many times. The doctor, aka Mr. Verkhoshansky, didn't refer to it as such, and like we said, called it the shock method instead of the plyometrics. However, the principle remains the same. Plyometrics are exercises that target your fast twitch muscle fibers to produce acceleration and force. This type of power is needed in high-intensity sports such as football, track, Olympic weightlifting, etc. Let's dive a little deeper into muscle fibers, and specifically IIX fibers, which are the fibers that we need to produce acceleration and force. IIX fibers have a small number of mitochondria, which most of you know is the powerhouse of the cell. IIX fibers also have greater glycolysis ability, aka the metabolic pathway converting glucose to pyruvic acid. However, IIX fibers have slower recovery rates, therefore, when training to produce max amount of forces, we need to rest for longer amount of times in order to get the full training effect. The good part of IIX fibers is that we generate greater force. Athletes need plyometrics in order to succeed. Plyometrics have almost a direct carryover to almost every sport. Plyos build explosiveness, which we had already talked about. They also make you more agile, faster, and quicker, and develop your strength, speed, etc., etc. Alright, we'll dive into a bit more about the sport-specific part of plyometrics. Plyometrics can be sport-specific, and we can do certain plyometrics that mimic movements in a sport that can benefit you. So, let's say, for example, football, we're going to want to do... Actually, no. Let's talk about basketball. Basketball, if we're looking to jump higher, get more leg drive in our shot, we might want to start incorporating plyos such as like box jumps or squat jumps, etc., to really work on that direct mimic movement into your sport. So, next I wanted to talk about the dynamic method and really how plyometrics and dynamic effort go hand in hand. The dynamic effort method was defined by Vladimir Zatsiorsky is the method in which the athlete applies maximum force and acceleration at submaximal weights. The goal of dynamic effort work is to produce max force, recruit muscle fibers and motor units while completing workouts in a shorter time frame. we can apply the dynamic method to really multiple exercises. For the most part, the dynamic method is seen in powerlifting, as it was originally developed or really brought to attention in the U.S. by Louis Simmons and Westside Barbell. When we're doing the dynamic method, usually if we're applying it to something like squats, the weight on the bar can really vary from person to person. However, typically it is around the range of 50 to 70% that is most optimal for many athletes. It is important to keep in mind that the athlete does not overdo the volume. Typically, volume for squats and bench may be something like 8 to 12 sets for 2 to 3 reps, or for deadlift volume, it may be more like 8 to 10 singles or doubles. The application of accommodating resistance, such as bands and chains, as long as they are being used correctly and effectively, can help better the outcome of that dynamic effort workout. Using bands, so I would like to go over a bit more about how to use bands and how we can utilize them in our dynamic workouts to better produce greater force and acceleration for carryover into sports. Bands should be applying tension at both the top and bottom of the movement, and it should not be losing all tension. The purpose of the bands is to increase our peak contraction and force our body to produce more force for a greater amount of time. As for chains, at the top of the lift, more specifically speaking, squat or bench, there should be about 4 to 5 chain links on the ground. This way they're able to deload at the bottom of the movement and reapply in the concentric portion of the lift. So, for example, if anyone has seen my Instagram post last week, I had an SSB box squat with 40 pounds of chains. There's about 4 or 5 links of chains on each side. As the eccentric, lowering phase of the lift, the chains began to fall onto the ground. So the chains were supported by the ground, taking weight off as I lower onto the box. While on the box, I build up energy, and as I go off the box, as I'm squatting up, more weight is being applied to the bar from the chains, as they are no longer being supported by the ground. There are many reasons why athletes should utilize the dynamic method. Lots of coaches and athletes include Olympic lifts in their workout, and the Olympic lift's purpose in many programs is to build explosiveness by reaching triple extension. However, most athletes are not actually reaching triple extension in their lifts. And the problem with this for younger athletes is that it takes a lot of skill to learn the Olympic lifts. The Olympic lifts obviously consisting of the snatch and the clean and jerk. So implementing dynamic work through easier lifts such as squat, bench, and deadlift may be more optimal, as it's an easier lift to learn and doesn't require as much skill. Once the athlete has the capability of squatting, benching, and deadlifting, you can then begin to implement accommodating resistance such as bands and chains. So that's really all I had today for this podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed and have a great weekend.